welcome back to the final session of today's special session. We are at the start of the Arctic Policy Forum, focusing on the theme on how policy meets people. The Arctic Policy Forum was first organized in 2012 to provide guidance on the direction of Korea's Arctic policy in a rapidly changing Arctic environment, and to explore ways of cooperation between domestic and international organizations. The Arctic Policy Forum brings together representatives from diplomacy and policy to discuss how Arctic policies can better serve and reflect the needs of Arctic communities. For this roundtable discussion, I am pleased to introduce our chair, Dr. Yoong-Duk Kim, President of the Korea Maritime Institute. And with him on stage, Dr. Kim has Ambassador Anne Kari Hansen Ovid from Norway, who has extensive experience working with Arctic issue and who has also been instrumental in strengthening Arctic collaboration between Norway and Korea. We also welcome back to the stage Jakob Isbosetsen, Head of Greenland Representation in Beijing, as well as from Finland, Second Secretary Oskari Lambi from the Embassy of Finland in Seoul. He brings the perspectives from a country with a strong track record on innovation and tech development, as well as sustainability. President Kim, the stage is yours.
네, 감사합니다. 네, 이번 세션은 정책과 북극이라는 주제로 여러분들과 이야기를 하게 되었습니다. 이번 세션에서는 북극 국가들이 실제 북극에 거주하고 있는 사람들과 북극 국가들의 정책이 실제 북극에 거주하고 있는 사람들과 어떻게 연결되어 있는지, 또 기후변화라는 인류 공동의 도전 과제가 어떤 방식으로 북극 국가들은 추진하고 있는지, 또 북극 국가들은 미래를 위해서 어떠한 정책을 준비하고 있는지, 이런 부분을 중심으로 논의를 하도록 하겠습니다. 이러한 문제에 대해서 우리가 이해를 하고자 하는 것은 북극의 지속 가능한 발전의 모습을 우리가 그려볼 수 있을 뿐만 아니라 우리가 북극에 대해서 상상이 아닌 현실을 이해하는 데 도움이 되리라 저는 생각을 하고 있습니다. 오늘 각 노르웨이, 또 그린란드, 핀란드에서 국가를 대표해서 지금 말씀을 좀 주실 것 같고요. 나중에 플로어에 시간이 좀 남으면 플로어에 계신 분들께도 이번 세션이 아니더라도 오늘 토론에서 혹시 궁금한 점이 있으셨으면 질문을 좀 받도록 하겠습니다. 첫 번째 질문은 세 분께 공통으로 드릴까 합니다. 우리가 사람이라는 개념이 사실은 굉장히 포괄적인 개념입니다. 현재 각국이 수립해서 추진하고 있는 북극 정책의 키워드이기도 합니다. 특히 북극 정책의 핵심 목표라고 이야기할 수 있는 북극의 지속 가능한 발전에서 사람이 차지하는 그 위치는 가장 핵심이 아닌가 이렇게 생각을 합니다. 그래서 이 각국에서 우리 지속 가능한 발전과 또 사람을 중심으로 추진하고 있는 정책이 있으면 우선 소개를 좀 받고 다음 질문에 넘어가도록 하겠습니다. 첫 번째는 우리 대사님께 마이크를 넘기도록 하겠습니다. Please, floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Kim, and also I would like to congratulate the Ministry of Fisheries and Ocean and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for hosting this Arctic Partnership Week. It's the third time I participate, and I'm always very eager to come here, so thank you for inviting me. And also, thank you for putting people on the agenda for the Arctic Partnership Week this year. I think it's very important that it is understood around the world that the Arctic is not a barren, empty, and cold place. It's really a place where people live, that resilient communities and cultures actually thrive. So I think it's really good that we can discuss people in connection with the Arctic here in Korea. Another point is that what happens in the rest of the world also affect the Arctic and people living in the Arctic. And you have been discussing and highlighting, of course, the effects of climate change in the previous sessions. But also, let me just mention that competition and superpower rivalries that lead to more tendencies towards regionalization and protectionism, for instance, also impact, developments in the Arctic. And war and conflict around the world is also one of the global mega trends that also impact the Arctic. The Russian aggression in Ukraine that impact, international cooperation all over the world, also impact the Arctic. And then thirdly, that global mega trend, climate change. We have heard earlier today that the temperature is rising 4 times faster in the Arctic than elsewhere. And of course, emissions globally is what really impact the global warming. It doesn't really happen in the Arctic, but it ends up in the Arctic. And the same goes for microplastics and plastic pollution as another example that really impact the environment of the Arctic. So my point is that to talk about people is very meaningful because in the case of Norway, some 9% of Norway's population live north of the Arctic Circle. 1/3 of Norway's land masses is north of the Arctic Circle, and 80% of Norway's maritime area is north of the Arctic Circle. So very much the basis for economic development, sustainable development, and how, for our export and for how people live. Developments in our part of the world, in the Norwegian Arctic, matters to people living in Norway and to people living in south, west, and in the northern part of Norway. So I just wanted to mention that. And of course, people has always been in the center of sustainable development in Norway's Arctic policy. And how is that reflected? I think it is reflected in many ways. The way we invest in infrastructure, thriving economies and thriving communities in the northern part of Norway. It really depends also on infrastructure, roads, harbors, connectivity is important, but also it is important to base all economic activity on environmental research and science. So investments in institutions that do Arctic research and collaboration with other countries such as Korea, but also located in the Arctic, has been really essential and continue to be essential. If we want to develop our economy and manage our resources properly, we need that science and that environmental basic knowledge. And that is absolutely essential. To protect local, to engage local communities, protect indigenous people's rights, economic, traditionally activities and culture is also an essential part of Norway's Arctic policy. And of course also to create, stimulate creativity and cultural activity. I just wanted to mention that this year, Bodø, which is one of the Norwegian cities located north of the Arctic Circle, is actually Europe's cultural capital, one of the Europe's cultural capital this year. And I think it also illustrates very well how culture and thriving communities are really important in this region. From also a long time back, we have developed education and universities in the Arctic. It means a lot for knowledge development, but also for thriving communities. and the Norwegian Arctic University in Tromsø, which has also branches even further north, and also the university in Bodø, just to mention a few examples, have played an essential role for developing good livelihoods and also attracted researchers and students from around the world, also from Korea, to put it that way. So thank you again for just let me lay out a few examples how people in the Arctic and people is absolutely essential for sustainable development in Norway's Arctic policy. Thank you.
네, 대사님 감사합니다. 이 노르웨이라는 나라가 북극에서 차지하고 있는 그런 위치 또 역할 매우 중요한 국가입니다. 지금 북극 이사회 의장국을 맡고 있기도 하시고요. 또 북극에 살고 있는 주민은 10%에 불과하지만 사실은 북극은 노르웨이 경제, 사회, 문화의 가장 핵심적인 공간으로 자리 잡고 있다. 이러한 지역에 거주하고 있는 사람들의 지속 가능한 또 문화생활, 또 경제생활을 위해서 노르웨이 정부가 하고 있는 경제, 사회, 환경, 투자 각종 분야에 대한 그런 사례를 조금 말씀해 주셨습니다. 대단히 고맙습니다. 예, 다음 저희 오랜 친구인 야콥에게 우리 그린란드의 이야기를 좀 들어보도록 하겠습니다. Please.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for the question. I fully agree that the concept of people is very broad, and I also agree a lot with Ambassador Ovin with many of the things you said, so I will try to make it short from my side. The people of Greenland is called Kalaallit. The Greenlandic Inuit is one people, but we Kalaallit is also an indigenous people, and therefore we as Kalaallit are the indigenous people of Greenland. And our country is called Kalaallit Nunaat, the land of the Greenlanders. And we are the only indigenous population living in the Arctic from the Kingdom of Denmark. And it's also very special compared to the other Arctic indigenous populations in northern Canada, Alaska, and so on, because we are the majority in our own country. We have our own government and our own parliament who takes most of the most important decisions by ourselves. So it's also a bit different. And also in a historical way, Greenland is a very special case because from roughly 1721 to 1953, we were a colony to Denmark. And I don't know what we were called back then, but suddenly we were Danish citizens. And when Denmark joined the European Union in 1973, I think, suddenly we became also European citizens until 1979, where we were granted home rule. And one of the first decisions the government of Greenland decided to do was to withdraw from the European Union. And in 1985, we were not a part of the European Union anymore, so we were not European citizens, even though on our passports and citizenship we are still Danish citizens. So I think Greenland is a very special place in that sense, and a very broad term when you are talking about people. And then on the other hand, you can also mention that maybe many people in Greenland also has a strong connection with the indigenous peoples and local communities in northern Alaska and in northern Canada and northern Siberia and so on, where we especially have the ICC, the Inuit Circumpolar Conference, which is a permanent participant to the Arctic Council, who is also doing a lot of effort in that. Of course, we are sharing the language and the cultures with these people, but we are also, due to our history, very, very much connected to the Nordic countries and the European Union, despite of our special history.
네, 야콥 고마워요. 그린란드의 역사는 아마 따로 강의를 들어야 될 정도로 복잡하고 흥미로운 부분이 많습니다. 저도 그린란드를 한번 갔었는데 거의 대부분이 그 원주민이시고 어떻게 보면 동양적인 생각이 굉장히 많으신 분들이더라고요. 그래서 너무나 친절하시고 또 이방인에 대한 그런 우호적인 그런 태도와 또 저희들을 환대해주는 그런 모습에 굉장히 큰 감동을 받은 적이 있습니다. 점점 이제 자치적인 역량을 길러가고 있다고 저는 이해를 하고 있고요. 그럼에도 불구하고 기후 변화는 그린란드의 가장 큰 위협이면서 또 기회가 되고 있는 그런 상황이 아닌가 하는 생각을 하게 됩니다. 다음에 좀 더 자세한 재미있는 말씀을 좀 들려주시기 바랍니다. 다음 우리 핀란드에서 오신 핀란드 대사관에서 오신 우리 오스카리께 마이크 넘기겠습니다.
Thank you. I could have started talking about this topic with almost the exact same words as Ambassador Ovind earlier. So Arctic is an area where people live, and that has to be the starting point when we talk about Arctic matters. So we see it extremely important and emphasize the participation of Arctic indigenous peoples in decision making. And nowadays, when we talk about sustainable development, it also encompasses a lot of other matters and other people than the indigenous peoples. If we talk about the Finnish national strategy level, we have an Arctic strategy from year 2021. But it's a lot of the priorities are still very, very relevant. The priorities are climate change mitigation and adaptation, Arctic inhabitants, Arctic expertise, and infrastructure and logistics. So these are still very central when we talk about the government approach to the Arctic. But as said, at the moment, when we talk about the Arctic, often security is nowadays of central role, especially after the Russian war of aggression against Ukraine. Security occupies a lot of government time, attention, and money. But when we talk about security, it is important to remember that the security begins from the people, that the people in the Arctic region, in this case northern Finland, are resilient, the societies are resilient, the people are well-doing, well-being, well-educated, so they are then well-prepared when faced crisis. Finland is and has been an advocate of so-called comprehensive security, which means that the preparedness is a cooperation between the government, industry, civil society, and the people, the individuals. And that's why what we do, how we develop the region, people's livelihoods, economic activity, these are all very relevant aspects of security. Maybe as an example, I would say that for decades there's been talks about having a railroad connection from Finland, northern Finland, to the Arctic Sea. And there has been multiple studies on this, and economic feasibility has always been a certain challenge in this. But this discussion is more and more surfacing again. In one way from the security aspects, from the security of supply. But on the other hand, all the decisions we make and regarding, for example, infrastructure only being an example, has to do with the people, the livelihoods of the people, and only people who are alive and active in the region, and that the region is vibrant, can secure a region that is also resilient when needed. Thank you.
네, 감사합니다. 이게 핀란드를 보시면 북극권 국가이긴 하지만 북극의 바다를 면하고 있지 않습니다. 그래서 북극권과 핀란드를 연결하는 철도 말씀을 마지막에 해주셨는데, 그리고 또 핀란드는 지정학적으로 러시아와 접경 지역이 굉장히 길고 많죠. 그래서 아마 그 안보 문제가 핀란드의 어떤 북극 문제뿐만 아니라 핀란드 전체 국가의 문제에 직접적인 영향을 주고 있고 그 중에서도 특히 북극과 관련되는 이슈들에 많은 영향을 주고 있다 이렇게 말씀을 하신 것 같습니다. 그럼에도 불구하고 우리 북극 정책에 있어서는 원주민들과 지역 주민들의 의견을 최대한 반영하는 그런 정부의 메커니즘을 가지고 있는 것으로 그렇게 이해를 하겠습니다. 네, 고맙습니다. 예, 다음은 개별 질문을 하나씩 좀 드리겠습니다. 우리 안네 카리 한센 오빈 대사님께서도 중간에 말씀을 한번 하셨는데 올해 4월 달에 저희 연구원의 해양수산정책부 장관님과 방문을 하셨습니다. 그래서 해사 분야, 그러니까 해운 분야죠. 해운의 한 파트인 해사 분야에서의 성평등 문제를 가지고 저희들이 라운드 테이블을 한 적이 있습니다. 저는 이 문제의 중요성을 알고는 있었지만 이 노르웨이에서 이렇게 체계적인 그런 대응 방안과 향후의 비전을 제시하는 모습에 굉장히 감명을 받았습니다. 그 외에도 여러 가지 이슈가 있을 것 같은데 대사님께서 생각하시기에 북극 지역에서 해결해야 할 불평등의 문제, 또 이 사람과 직접 관계되는 거죠. 어떤 부분이 노르웨이에게 고민이 되고 있는지 또 그 문제를 해소하기 위해서는 또 어떤 노력을 하고 계시는지 조금 설명을 좀 부탁을 드립니다.
Yes. Thank you, and thank you also for hosting our Minister of Fisheries and Ocean at a very interesting roundtable at KMI this spring. The reason why we put gender equality in the maritime sector on the agenda during our visit here to, or during her visit here to Korea, is in fact the following. Norway is a leading maritime country, and we have to invest for the future. And in the future, we need to rely on more decarbonized maritime sector, more green solutions in the maritime sector. So we need more people to work in the maritime sector, and we need to recruit the best talents. And to do that, we need to ensure that we can recruit from the whole population and not only half the population. Because the fact is that in the maritime sector, there are less women working in the maritime sector. In fact, when it comes to seafarers, for instance, there are some 11% female and some 21% female in the maritime sector overall. And these are fairly good figures compared to maybe other parts of the world. But we really need to innovate, and we need to recruit from the whole population. And that actually sparked the idea of developing a strategy that was launched by the Norwegian government last year on how we can ensure more gender equality in the maritime sector. So we discussed that, and I think that, first of all, recruitment to the sectors that are relevant for education to work in the maritime sector, that is a key priority in this maritime strategy. And I think that the Minister of Fisheries and Ocean herself is indeed a very good role model talking about these things, and also how she developed policies and steered leadership in the fisheries and ocean sector. Recruitment, of course, means a lot. How do we motivate, how do we stimulate young women to choose sectors such as engineering sectors and also seafarer training programs and so on that are important for the maritime sector? This is part of our strategy. Another very important element is, of course, how can we ensure that the working place in the maritime sector actually favors everyone? How to make sure that the workplace is clean of harassment and these behaviors that are very difficult to deal with. So these are other elements of the maritime strategy. And as the maritime sector, and industry is a global sector. We can't really talk about the Arctic in particular. We can't even talk about national policies in particular, because the sector is global. So we need to work with IMO, we need to work with ILO to standardize, good and how can I say it? Not good, but adapted models. And we need to work with countries like Korea, which is such an important maritime partner. So that's why we brought this theme and had this very inspirational, I think, roundtable where also good role models from the Korean maritime sector visited and participated. So I hope that we can continue this conversation with universities and training centers here in Korea, and also share experience from your sector. And as we go along implementing our strategy in Norway, that we can also share, how we work with the maritime actors and the sectors and the business themselves going forward. Thank you.
네, 여기 계신 분들 조금 생소하실지 모르겠으나 이게 해사 분야의 노동력의 한계는 우리나라뿐만 아니라 노르웨이뿐만 아니라 전 세계적으로 굉장히 지금 중요한 이슈로 부상이 되고 있습니다. 선원들은 일정 시간마다 교대를 해야 되고요. 그래서 선박 하나당 필요한 선원수가 배를 타고 있는 사람 숫자가 아니고 그 곱하기 3 정도가 되어야 이게 순환이 됩니다. 그러다 보니 그에 대한 공급 체계, 그 선원을 유지하는 그런 체계가 굉장히 중요해지고 있는데, 말씀드린 것처럼 전 세계 무역의 80%를 지고 단 한순간도 중지돼서는 안 되는 그런 비클이기 때문에 그런 부분에 대해서 노르웨이도 아주 정말로 진정한 정책을 지금 펼고 있다고 생각을 하고요. 특히 노르웨이 같은 나라는 말씀하신 것처럼 80%의 바다가 북극해에 있습니다. 그러다 보니까 북극의 마리타임 이슈가 노르웨이 전체의 마리타임 이슈가 되고, 거기서 인력에 관한 문제는 아주 중심적인 요소가 돼서 여성 문제에 대한 이런 대응을 해 나가고 있지 않을까 하는 생각이 듭니다. 우리 대사님께 특히 감사드리는 것은 늘 제가 우리 대사님을 한 10번 정도 만나 뵌 것 같아요. 만나 뵐 때마다 늘 한국과 이런 부분에 대한 교류와 협력 의지를 이렇게 표현을 하십니다. 그래서 이 부분은 제가 늘 감사드리고, 아마도 이때까지처럼 그런 협력이 계속되지 않을까, 더 좋아지지 않을까 하는 희망을 가지고 있습니다. 대단히 고맙습니다. 다음은 우리 야콥 그린란드 대표님께 말씀을 좀 묻겠습니다. 아까 말씀드린 것처럼 그린란드는 원주민 비율이 거의 90%, 제가 보기엔 거의 100%로 보입니다. 그래서 그만큼 그린란드 내에서 북극 정책은 바로 북극 원주민들의 삶과 복지에 직결되는 체계가 되어 있지 않을까 하는 생각이 듭니다. 물론 전체 정책 자체가 우리 그린란드에 계시는 원주민들을 위한 정책이겠지만, 특별히 이 원주민을 위한 그런 정책, 또 덴마크와의 협력, 또 한국과의 한국 같은 비북극과의 협력에 있어서 좀 참고할 만한 코멘트를 저희한테 주시면 좋겠다는 생각이 좀 드네요. Yes.
Thank you. Maybe going back to the session we had just before, to follow up on your question with Korea. We also have a national research strategy where we have 4 goals or 4 main points where we say research must be anchored in Greenland, and research must support sustainable society development, and research results must be easily accessible to everybody, and it must also be conducted on an international level. So I think if a country like Korea is following these principles, I think we can get very far, and other countries as well. It is correct, as you mentioned, that the majority of people of Greenland is Greenlanders or are indigenous people compared to maybe other countries, and we have a very special arrangement or constitutional setup within the Kingdom of Denmark. For instance, the Greenlandic is our national language. Together with the Faroe Islands, we can do many international things and agreements and act on the international scene. But also that we, together with Denmark, have decided that if Greenland wants to be an independent state in the future, we can simply just do it. It is the will of the Greenlandic people. And it is written in the Act of Self-Governance in a complete agreement between the Danish and Greenlandic government. And there's nothing controversial with that. Of course, there's some practicalities and other things. But compared to other indigenous peoples, I think that is quite significant and quite special. And I think many indigenous peoples or indigenous groups are envy at us that we have this constitutional setup, even though our history have shown that it has not always been a harmonious relationship between Greenland and Denmark. But in terms of your other question also is that whatever we do, it is per definition Arctic policy or indigenous people's policy, because we are the majority in our own country. So whatever, if we have a national research strategy, or we have a new fishery management legislation, or if we have a new foreign defense and security policy, it is per definition our own strategy by ourselves for our own people. And that is also something that is different, probably compared to other countries where you have indigenous peoples living. So I think that showcases that that is how we do it, and that is why it is also difficult for us to differentiate what is indigenous people's policies or a specific Arctic policy, because everything is per definition that because of our geographical location in the Arctic as the world's largest island.
네, 야콥 대표께서 말씀하신 것처럼 그린란드의 모든 정책은 사실은 북극 정책이고 그 모든 정책에는 우리 그린란드에 사는 모든 사람들에 대한 정책이 당연히 되리라고 생각을 합니다. 그래서 북극 정책을 이렇게 분리해내는 것 자체가 사실은 의미가 별로 없는 그런 상황이란 말씀을 주셨고요. 또 연구에 대해서 각별히 말씀해 주셨는데 그린란드에 대한 어떤 연구 협력 이런 부분들은 전 세계적으로 좀 관심을 가져야 되는 부분이 아닌가 저는 그렇게 생각을 합니다. 그래서 그린란드의 역량과 또 그 외 국가들의 선의의 역량, 이것이 잘 결합이 돼서 그린란드가 겪게 될지도 모를 그런 미래의 어떤 변화를 우리가 사전에 충분히 예상을 하고 그린란드에 살고 계시는 모든 분들의 안전에 기여할 수 있는 그런 체계가 같이 노력을 통해서 이루어진다면 굉장히 중요한 북극 협력이 되지 않을까 하는 생각이 듭니다. 예, 감사합니다. 예, 마지막으로 우리 핀란드의 오스카리 람피 서기관님께 여쭤보겠습니다. 우리나라는 매년 유아틱하고 북극 아카데미를 개최하고 있습니다. 그동안 10년간 저희들이 했는데요. 약 190명 학생이 참석을 해서 젊은 학생들이 북극 문제를 같이 고민하고 소통한 적이 있고요. 2016년부터는 5년간 저희가 라프란드 대학에 한국의 석박사 학생들을 약 3주 정도 보내서 교육을 시킨 적도 있습니다. 이 라프란드 대학이 가지고 있는 북극에 관한 그런 교육 역량이 굉장히 뛰어나다고 저희들이 판단을 해서 운영한 바도 있습니다. 그래서 앞으로 북극권과 비북극권 간의 미래 세대 간의 교류와 소통이 저는 굉장히 중요할 거라고 생각이 들고요. 그래서 이런 부분에 대해서 핀란드가 가지고 있는 생각, 그리고 또 비북극권 국가들가 어떤 참여를 관여를 해줬으면 좋을지 하는 그런 의견이 있으시면 같이 공유를 해주시면 감사하겠습니다.
Yes, thank you. Of course, UArctic as a network and the Korea Arctic Academy are great platforms for exchange and cooperation, and a great opportunity to foster future interest to both directions of students and researchers. I think there definitely is more room for cooperation academically between Korea and Finland. Finland in this case, as in the keynote speech it was mentioned, business happens at the speed of trust. I think that is something that somewhat applies to research also. It's important to build connections between people, between institutions. So active visiting to both directions would be very much welcome. And of course, embassy also has a role. We hope to contribute in building connections. Another point, maybe I would mention that, as maybe we have been speaking already, also a lot of the research activity that is related to Arctic doesn't necessarily only happen in the Arctic. So it's important to also recognize that there are a lot of opportunities in applications and topics that are not specific to Arctic, but can be very important in relation to Arctic. I'm repeating myself with the security issue, but this is just an example. We nowadays talk a lot about new satellite technology on the military sector, but a lot of the development in universities and research institutions began motivated by monitoring climate change and its effects. So there's a lot of room to do, and research is very international, and institutions, academic institutions also in Finland and in Lapland are very international. So, but sometimes they might need a bit of push also from the partner side. So I encourage into activity, looking for opportunities, seeing if there are common chances for common funding applications. Might Korea's association to Horizon Europe bring chances? So I think there's a lot of opportunities, a lot of room for growth. Thank you.
네, 저희 연구기관뿐만 아니라 한국의 많은 우리 해양수산 관련 기관들이 핀란드 대사관과 아주 긴밀한 협력을 해오고 있습니다. 우리 북극 아카데미 같은 경우는 우리 가장 많은 학생들이 저희 한국을 찾아왔던 그런 국가 중에 하나이기도 하고요. 또 핀란드는 통신 분야, 또 우리 쇄빙선, 조선 분야에 최첨단 기술을 가지고 있는 국가이기도 합니다. 그래서 우리 한국과 특히 아시아와의 어떤 그런 교류 협력은 미래의 산업에 아주 중요한 역할을 할 수 있지 않을까 하는 생각도 동시에 가지고 있습니다. 말씀하신 것처럼 연구 협력뿐만 아니라 우리 경제 사회적 이슈까지 같이 서로 다룰 수 있는 그런 기회가 더 넓어졌으면 하는 바람입니다. 예, 오늘 이렇게 세 분을 모시고 말씀을 들었는데 시간이 조금 짧아서 아쉽긴 합니다만 이것으로 토론을 마치도록 하겠습니다. 대단히 송구한데 우리 플로어에서 질문을 제가 받았으면 좋겠는데 다음 스케줄이 너무 밀려 있어가지고 제가 그렇게 하지 못함을 대단히 송구하게 생각합니다. 세션이 끝나고 나면 개별적으로 오셔서 질문을 주시면 저희가 꼼꼼히 답변을 드릴 수 있도록 그렇게 노력하겠습니다. 예, 이걸로 이번 세션 마치도록 하겠습니다. 감사합니다.
Thank you, President Kim and all the panelists. As we heard, Arctic is a high priority for these three countries, and it boils down to people, development, and security. Excellencies, dear friends of the Arctic, as today's special session comes to a close, I'd like to thank all the chairs of the sessions, as well as all the speakers, for attending and sharing their wisdom with us. Your insights have contributed to an increased understanding of the Arctic and the collaboration potential between the Arctic and Korean stakeholders. I would also like to express our sincere appreciation to the hosting organizations, the Ministry of Ocean and Fisheries, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Korea Maritime Institute, Korea Polar Research Institute, the Royal Norwegian Embassy in Seoul, and the Embassy of Denmark in Seoul. Also, I would like to thank the interpretation team for the excellent work done throughout this afternoon. Finally, the Arctic Partnership Week will continue tomorrow and on Thursday with topics varying from youth inclusion, shipping, art, the role of AI, as well as various topics related to science and science cooperation. Please return in the coming days for more discussions and interactions with various experts. Thank you and have a great evening.